Welcome to the Turnpike Sports Spotlight. Dave Weishuttle with you. I'm always excited to talk to our next guest because he's always working on the most interesting projects. And SCCG Management has done it again with the report on niche sports entitled Primer on the Growth and Gamification of Niche Sports. SCCG always seems like it's on the cutting edge of the gaming industry, and we're going to find out all about it because on the line, fresh from the SBC conference in Barcelona and G2E in Vegas, we have the CEO and founder of SCCG Management, Stephen Crystal. Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you, Dave.
Oh, it's always great to have you. I mean, now anyone who works in the gaming industry knows SCCG Management. It's an incredible source of information. I told you off air, I'm part of a couple of panels at the Casino Esport Conference in November in Atlantic City, and your primer on esports and gambling that you recently released is an amazing source of information for me. So I actually personally want to thank you for putting that one out. But for people who don't know, tell us something about SCCG Management.
Sure, Dave. SCCG is the largest global advisory firm advising over 150 B2B and B2C brands within iGaming, sports betting, esports, skill-based gaming, on and on. We reach 11 global markets through our regional offices throughout the globe, including emerging markets like Brazil, India, even in Dubai. And so we're connecting our suppliers, our brands with operators and platforms and media brands around the globe. And it's a very unique ecosystem that we've created.
Now, as I've said in the intro, you just got back from the SBC conference in Barcelona and G2E in Vegas. Now I've known you for a while, and I've seen you at conferences, and you are in your element in these conferences because you're just a ball of energy, and you talk to everyone, and you get all the trends, and you talk to everyone who is important in the gaming industry. Now, from attending these important conferences and from talking to everyone, what do you see as some of the big issues that face the gaming industry in the coming months and the coming year? And what are some of the important trends we should be looking out for?
Look, there's really two overarching trends, and that is either the movement towards more and more regulation, like we're seeing in particular in the UK, and when that happens, it causes a lot of the fringe players in a market to leave the market. Mm-hmm. And the question is, where do they go? And where they go are to the emerging markets. So the two overarching themes is regulation or overregulation and what that entails for the industry. And then the second is the movement towards emerging markets where there is either no regulation or less regulation. And what does that entail, both in terms of brands, in terms of offerings and technology? And so we have to kind of navigate, we come from America and where there is significant regulation, and we're in the beginning stages of a movement to digital gaming with sports and iGaming. And the question is, well, where will regulation go? But we also have to work in a world like in Brazil, which will be newly regulated, moving from the gray, LATAM, which is lightly regulated in most places, except like, let's say, a Peru, which just adopted regulation. So it's really about understanding the ebb and flow between regulated markets, overregulated markets, and lightly or not regulated markets.
Now, speaking of big issues that will certainly be a part of the gaming industry is the prevalence of niche sports. And SCCG Management just released their primer on niche sports and its place in the gaming and sports betting industries. Just so people understand what we're talking about when we say niche sports, what kind of sports are we referring to?
I think actually COVID put a spotlight on the potential of niche sports because during COVID, it was really niche sports that were able to break through, like ping pong or table tennis, American cornhole or cornhole. These were sports that could be broadcast and streamed. They could occur even during COVID. They could occur 24/7. They could be broadcast internationally. Even esports saw a huge rise during COVID. So the notion is that that content is king. We know that in Europe and in LATAM, Brazil, and other places around the world, soccer or football dominates.
Yeah.
We know that in America, our version, football, dominates. Mm-hmm. These are the predominant sports, and they occur at a certain time. But there's lots of time when we don't have these dominant sports playing that bettors, punters, want to consume content. And so we've always had different sports, whether it's snooker or whether it's, Olympics when it comes, or, things that occur, at different times or infrequently. They can create compelling betting content. More recently, we've seen the proliferation of, and we participate in a few, but we're backing right now, professional pillow fighting, PFC.
Yeah, I saw that.
We're backing, we backed Northwoods League, which is semi-pro baseball. We've backed AUDL, which is Frisbee football. We're backing Versus FC, which is MMA. Mm-hmm. My point being, these sports, these niche sports, are very compelling. They're able to be gamified not only as sports betting products, but as virtual products, as crash games or slot products. In other words, the type of a monetization that can be garnered from this content is significant. The importance of it is that you have a dedicated community, a niche community that is passionate about this content, and they're engaged. This is the key. So you can micro-target to an engaged audience with the right content, and you can basically provide the entertainment that comes in the form of wagering and gamification. So this is the thesis and theory and practice and reality behind the focus on niche sports.
When we're talking about niche sports, how important is it to differentiate the regional differences when discussing what falls under the term niche sports? I mean, for example, you just got back from Spain. I would think they have a different idea than the United States would have of what is considered a niche sport. When it comes to niche sports, will we see a big difference around the world when we talk about the gamification of niche sports?
Yes. I mean, if in Europe or India, where we've traveled not too long ago, the niche sport that seems to be on the rise is padel, P-A-D-E-L, padel. Mm-hmm. In the U.S., it's pickleball.
Yeah.
Now there is pickleball around the world, and there's padel around the world, but in the U.S., pickleball seems to be the rage, and in the rest of the world, padel seems to be the rage. And both of them have, professional structures that have come together to produce content. So yes, there's not a universality to the niche sports in the sense that some are regional, some are localized, but there are characteristics that are universal, mm-hmm. and that is having dedicated communities, having a professional level and an amateur level. In other words, if it's a sport that people can play, I went recently to Smash Ball, which is trampoline.
Yeah, I know what that is, yeah.
Meets basketball, meets football, okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't for me, per se, but I saw, 2,000 people pack an arena in Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center. And the truth is, you could go to recreational clubs, rec centers around the U.S., and you could find Smash Ball courts. So if the niche sport can translate into popular culture and be accessible to amateurs, to mm-hmm. fans, then it has even more ability to transcend and become something that can be gamified or wagered upon.
I'm glad you mentioned pickleball because I am seeing that everywhere. And is that the dream of every niche sports, to be the next pickleball? I mean, can other niche sports learn from what the organizers of pickleball leagues are doing with regard to growth and gamification of the sport? Because it has just exploded.
Look, right now, I think everyone is trying to explore alternative revenue models. Mm-hmm. So if you're an emerging niche sport, we've worked with NASL, which was indoor soccer. We've worked with a lot of them. I mentioned AUDL, Frisbee football. I mean, basically, you start out with the traditional model, which is you have franchises, you have sponsors, you have streaming rights, you try to integrate your data feeds into sports books, you try to create video games or metaverse games or NFTs. I mean, it's like if you're trying to create a new sport, you're going to look at all revenue streams, and therefore you see the intersection between niche sports and gamification and gambling. Now, how many of these niche sports will make it? I mean, how many times did XFL come and leave?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe now it's here to stay, but my point is it's not easy to become, a major sport for sure. I mean, we pretty much have basketball and football speaking for 70-75% of the entire sports betting market in the U.S. That would make tennis and golf a niche sport. But in the U.K., tennis and golf is a much more major sport that people wager on. So, in fact, they've broken it down so that you could have more wagered on a tennis point during Wimbledon than an entire NFL Sunday. My point being that it's hard to break into that category, but when you consider the fact there's 24 hours in a day, and if you could provide content 24/7, 365, and you could target an audience or engage an audience, it doesn't cost as much to bring pickleball to a streamed site as compared to an NFL game. The production cost is lower. There's more events. They can happen at times that are more available for people who are not watching the major sports. So it's the flexibility, it's the targeting. This is the value of niche sports.
Well, let me ask you about streaming. I mean, last time we talked was about esports, and we discussed how important social media and the streaming platforms are for the growth of esports. How dependent are niche sports on the streaming platforms and the social media platform for growth of the sport? Because let's be honest, a lot of these sports don't have media contracts or don't have big media contracts. How dependent are these niche sports on streaming platforms and social media?
Well, look, if you look at an ESPN, which has, I think, 27 channels, they have quite a few. I mean, it used to be that was what was coveted, right? Getting a major network deal. I remember American Cornhole League had deals with NBC and Fox because there was absolutely nothing for people to do during COVID. But the truth is there are so many channels, including the services like Amazon or Hulu or Fubo. I mean, you go down the list of all the different channels that package up content. So my view would be that there's no shortage of channels with which to broadcast niche sports. Everyone hopes for the Holy Grail, like professional pillow fighting. PFC was featured on ESPN Ocho. It happened to get as many viewers as cornhole. So, and cornhole, definitely is at a peak. So that just shows you the power of something unique like pillow fighting. Now, these are real athletes, usually former UFC style or MMA style athletes, and so it's not like it is a sport and it is athletic, but it's a novelty. It starts out as a novelty until you create circuits and international distribution and broadcast. In other words, you have to fill out all of the potential streams or access or distribution points, and there are many more distribution points now than there used to be. So that's the good news for content providers.
I've always said I love the way sports nowadays are embracing modern technology. I'm talking about things like NFTs and cryptocurrency, and I'm curious what you think will be these niche sports relationship with the new technology that is becoming involved in the sports industry. I mean, niche sports will be new to a lot of people. Will these sports be utilizing the new technology that is out there in the sports industry?
I just wrote an article today in our newsletter that goes out to 50,000 influencers in the gaming industry every week worldwide. And the article was called Democratization of Sports. And it's about the use of technology to link athletes with directly with their fans. So in my view, what I'm betting on for the future is that technology, which includes a lot of what you mentioned and more, will take the structures that we think of, franchises and owners and, mega promoters. It will diminish the importance of those figures, and it will increase the importance of the fan to interact directly with the athlete who is providing the economics into the system to make it all work, so that we can have a situation where it's the fans that are determining who they want to see, what they want to see. It's the fans who are benefiting more than the rest of the infrastructure. Now, this is a little bit of a vision, and it's a little bit of a thesis, but I think we're seeing in many ways every day increasingly how fans can flex their muscle through social media to influence the outcome of many things. And it should be the same with respect to sports, since people spend so much time, consume so much of their time following sports and being passionate about it.
One thing that drives the success of a sport are sponsorships or endorsement deals. Where do you see niche sports fitting in with that issue? I mean, will a sport need to have a certain level of popularity before sponsorships start, or do you think sponsorships are necessary first in order for the sport to grow? I know it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of a scenario. What should come first, growth and popularity, or sponsorships in order to grow popularity?
Look, we still see the mega deals, people paying tens of millions of dollars to put their name, Caesars Superdome or Allegiant Stadium for the Raiders here in Vegas. I've negotiated lots of deals for BetFlash Sportsbook with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Denver Broncos. I think sponsorship has been the main source of revenue for decades. But my feeling is that its importance because of social media and influencers and what I've talked about in terms of the democratization of sports, using technology to put the fans more in synergy with the athletes, I think you're going to see traditional sponsorship become less important in the future. And what's going to become more important is the use of technology to micro-target interested communities, passionate communities, who will spend their dollars to participate as a spectator or a fan supporting sport. And so I think the paradigm is going to change and is changing.
Now, you mentioned sports betting, and nowadays everyone's betting on everything. When we talk about growth of a sport, a great way to grow a sport is getting a jurisdiction to allow betting on that sport. And there's a lot of betting on non-traditional sports out there. I mean, the fifth most bet on sport in Colorado is table tennis. People bet on darts. I put money on the Nathan's hot dog eating contest on the 4th of July. I'm curious, when niche sports have to approach regulators in order to get approval for betting, what type of challenges do these sports face when they present themselves to regulators?
Surprisingly, the barriers of entry are pretty low.
Really?
For sports, I mean, you have to have something that's deemed to be a professional sport, and there's certain criteria that can be met there. You have to show that there's integrity, either through the officiating or the judging or through the outcome verification. So the test that has to be met can be met by a large array of different niche sports, and a large array of niche sports have been approved state by state. Many of the sports as a standalone don't move the needle, but the major sportsbook companies like the DraftKings and the FanDuels and the MGMs and Caesars of the world, again, they like to use the niche sports as engaging content, bringing people into the portal at a time when they would not normally be experiencing a more traditional sport. So it's about basically, think of it like a cable channel who's providing 24/7, 365 programming. You need to have something to fill your 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. slot. Think of it that way.
Mm-hmm. That was my first thing when I thought of, what is in the mind of the regulators? And my question was, how much do regulators look at the history behind the sport? Lacrosse and rugby are organized sports, and a lot of high schools and colleges, they even have professional leagues. Hurling is an Olympic sport. Then we talk about chess, boxing, or floorball, which you mentioned in the report, which doesn't have that long a tradition of organized play. I was just curious how much of a difference that will make to a regulator when they make their determination that betting on a sport will be allowed.
Well, look, what I would say is the regulators are implementing rules and criteria. I don't need to tell you I'm a reform lawyer. Lawyers are pretty good at fitting most things into checklists and meeting criteria. So I would say it's not so simple that anything that you could come up with would meet the test. It has to be organized. It has to have rules and methodology of integrity and ensuring the result. It has to be something that is conducted in a format that's accessible to the public. It has to have known rules and rules that are officiated. These are just basic requirements that are second nature to us when we look at an organized sport like football or basketball.
Yeah.
But it's, sport is in the eye of the beholder. Who are you to say there's a passionate audience who likes to see people throw a frisbee down in essence, a football field, mm-hmm. and the artistic nature with which they are throwing and catching and maneuvering. It's almost like ballet meets football meets frisbee. Who's to say that's a sport or not a sport? It's in the eye of the beholder. And so I like the fact that we're allowing this now. The first time there's an abuse, the first time that there's something that there's a scandal, mm-hmm. Is when regulators will potentially tighten up that definition. So it's like anything. If it's abused, it will be restricted.
I'm glad you brought that up. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Matt Holt from U.S. Integrity, who's doing amazing things in the industry. And at that time, they just did a deal with a sport called World Long Drive. And one of the things that the organizers of World Long Drive said that we did this deal in order to become a bet on sport, which would in turn grow our sport. So if a niche sport is interested in entering the betting marketplace, how important is it to make a deal with a entity like U.S. Integrity to show regulators that they have a structure in place in order to move forward into the betting market?
Look, what I would say, if I take one step back, I don't believe a sport should come into existence only for the purpose of accessing betting so that betting can fuel the sport, because in most cases, betting will not materially create revenue sufficient to fuel the sport. So I think the premise is wrong, mm-hmm. but I think it is the source of revenue, and one of many sources. And if you're going to go down that path, obviously organizations like Matt's, he's at the top of the business in what he does. Yep. And there are others obviously who assist different sports organizations to go through the same process. You've got a Maserati, and sometimes people will use the Chevy. So that's what I would say about those types of organizations. They're definitely necessary. They definitely perform a service. They definitely facilitate more content coming in. But what I would challenge is the notion that sports betting alone for a niche sport will propel them necessarily into the next level. It could be a good addition. It could be a catalyst in the beginning, but it isn't a panacea. It isn't going to solve every issue associated with whether a sport succeeds or not.
Where do you think the issue of betting on niche sports is going? In the coming years, will we see more states allow more non-traditional betting markets in this country? And are there areas in the world that we should be looking to when we're talking about niche sports and the possibility of betting on them?
Look, in the rest of the world, this is always the case. What we talk about in the U.S. is always going to be at least for now, 10 to 15 to 20 years behind the rest of the world.
Yeah.
The things we struggle with in the U.S. are all new within the last 5, 6, 7 years. But what I would say about the U.S. is we'll see more and more and more until there's abuse, and then we'll see less. The U.S. attitude is we're going to give you a lot of latitude. You're going to do it in a fair and just way. And if you don't regulate yourself, if you don't show responsible behavior, then we're gonna come down and slap your hand and do more. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we have the Matt Holtz U.S. Integrities, because we have a desire to be proactive, so we can avoid any punitive regulation, so that we can be innovative. I think one day soon, the U.S., notwithstanding its late start, will be the leader in innovation, which is why we built the type of business we have at SCCG, because we know eventually the U.S., like it does in a lot of areas, will be a leader. Because why? We have the market here to drive innovation. We have the dollars. And so it should be a very, very exciting ride from here on out in the U.S.
SCCG Management is doing incredible work in the gaming industry, and you guys always seem to be working on something really interesting and really important for this industry. What can we be looking forward to from SCCG Management in the near future? I hear you have a new primer out today.
We have a new primer out today. What I decided to do was to get some of the younger folks. We really have a big mission at SCCG to support the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs in the gambling industry. We sponsored a G2E, which occurred just a few weeks ago. We sponsored the 20 in their 20s award, mm-hmm. which was given to 20 bright, shining men and women who are making a difference in iGaming, sports betting, casinos, esports, etc. So what we tried to do with the primer was to create a new kind of Bible, a new kind of context and overview written from the perspective of the next generation as to what is sports betting all about. Because as much as we innovate at SCCG, as much as I've been driving innovation for decades, I'm preparing in reality to hand that legacy of innovation over to the next generation. So almost everything we do now is with an eye towards looking at it from the vantage point of the folks that will be the future, the folks like my own children who are in their 20s. This is the inspiration. And so this primer is meant to look at it from their eyes and to really put what we do in a context. So I'd love to come back and talk about
Absolutely.
Some of the highlights in the future.
Stephen, we're running out of time, but the primer on the growth and gamification of niche sports from SCCG Research is just incredible. Where can people download it, and give out the website from SCCG Management so people can find out all the things SCCG Management is doing in the gaming industry?
It's easy, sccgmanagement.com, and it will take you into our ecosystem and our research and our weekly newsletter, all the things we're sharing with the gaming industry as to what we think the future is going to be about in our industry. And it's great to be here.
Stephen Crystal, CEO and founder of SCCG Management, who just put out the incredible report entitled Primer on the Growth and Gamification of Niche Sports. Thanks for coming on and talking about it. As the sports betting industry grows and more sports enter the sports betting marketplace, it's going to be a huge issue in the coming months and year. Stephen, as always, thanks for coming on. I can't wait to talk to you again because you guys always have amazing projects you're working on. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Dave.
That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on the Turnpike.